What's up, everybody? Joe Brown. This is the Heresy Financial Show, and the Great Resignation is still ongoing and maybe even getting worse here. We're taking a look at the jobs report. So there are now a record 5 million more job openings than unemployed people in the United States. So job openings moved to 11.3 million in February. That is 5 million more than the level of unemployed workers. So there are lots of job openings. Also, quits increased to 4.35 million. So 4.35 million quits. That is massive. So where are these? Education and health services had the highest level of job openings. Now, that's no surprise. Those are probably some of the jobs that people are going to be hopping from the most, considering job satisfaction and fulfillment, things like that. But look, this is not a situation where I think a lot of people get this wrong. This is not a situation where you're seeing people quitting and completely leaving the workforce. This is a situation of job churn. Certainly, there are a lot of people who have left the workforce over the last couple of years. The labor force participation rate is fairly high. Considering the historical trend. If you look at the historical trend all the way back to 1850, labor force participation rate was increasing until the turn of the millennium started decreasing. We had a big drop in 2020 and we have not recovered. It has been coming up, but we're still not yet to the low right before, the low before that drop. So we did have a big drop in labor force participation. But hires have been increasing. Look, hires increased by 263,000 in February, nudging the rate up to 4.4%. Layoffs and discharges edged lower to 1.39 million. So what's happening here is massive churn, and people are quitting their jobs. They're not getting fired. They're quitting. Hires have increased, so companies are hiring more. And job openings are still at all-time highs. We've got a massive amount of job openings, 5 million more than the total counted unemployed workers. That's not people who have left the workforce. That's people who are counted as unemployed. They're different numbers. And so this is something that we're seeing. It's called the Great Resignation. Really, it should be called the Great Churn. People are job hopping, looking for better opportunities. They're staying with a job for a couple of months and maybe a year max. They're looking for other opportunities. They're getting better opportunities as inflation pushes up the cost of living. Companies have to offer better and better incentives to come and work for them and stay. And so if somebody's not happy with their current job, they're leaving. I've talked about this in the past. I think this is a good thing. Long term, massive companies are very unfulfilling to work for. People have largely been stuck in unfulfilling and unsatisfactory jobs for a long time. And so now having the tide kind of change and turn, where people now, it's kind of like shifting the power back into the employees' hands, I think is fantastic for people, because if they're not getting what they want out of a job, they can leave and go look for it somewhere else. And so it's kind of put the power of negotiation back in the hands of the individuals. It'd be very different if we had a lot of small businesses. Like if there was in a decentralized system on a sound money standard, where you didn't have a fiat money system that was funding Wall Street, that was funding massive corporations, and centralization and large corporations that could then use this fiat system in order to pay lobbyists and wield the government and to pass laws and regulations that favor them over small businesses and prevent competition and grow monopolies. All of these things are symptoms of a fiat monetary system. If we didn't have that, you'd have many more small businesses that dominated their local area instead of large monopolies and with massive corporations. And these small businesses, then you get a lot more job satisfaction out of interacting with people that working on a small team for goals that you can all work towards together, with incentives that are aligned for the jobs and the work that you're doing. It'd be a much better situation. You'd have more human interaction, more people to people rather than business like on a relationship standpoint between employee and employer. So all of these things I think that are happening right now are good, but it's important to remember that this is a churn. This is not a great resignation. It's been mistitled. It's misleading. And the ADP report that came out today highlights that. Private payrolls grew by 455,000 in March, slightly more than expected. So jobs are they're adding to jobs, they're hiring. So this isn't a bunch of people just resigning and quitting and leaving the labor force. This is people jumping from one job to another. And so this another reason why that is more painful for the employer is because you have a situation now where you have to you have to hire somebody, which is expensive. Then you have to train them, which is expensive. And maybe right about the time where you, as a company, start to reap the rewards, get a positive ROI on somebody, they jump ship and go somewhere else that's going to give them better, that has a better incentive system. And so you have more and more pressure on companies to offer higher and higher incentives that'll keep somebody to, stay long enough so that the company can at least get a positive return on their investment. It's very, very expensive for a company to hire somebody. If your salary is $100,000, it's costing that company at least $200,000 a year to hire you in terms of what they have to pay in benefits and taxes. And so it's very expensive for companies to hire. And so you have the companies thinking about that, and they're having an increase. And so while a lot of people might see their salaries go up a little bit every time they jump, the costs to the companies are going up even larger. So in response to this, we're seeing the Federal Reserve has become much more aggressive, again, in their words, not their actions yet, in what they're going to be doing. So if you look at what they're saying, hey, we could be raising rates by 0.5% every single time through the rest of this year. Very, very aggressive, considering how easy and dovish they've been over the last couple of years in response to the inflation and in response to the fact that they've got a dual mandate. And so now they're saying, okay, well, the dual mandate by Congress is, one of them is maximum employment, the other one is stable prices. We clearly don't have stable prices. And so they're just saying, okay, maximum employment, we can't do anything about labor force participation, but we can do something about inflation. Even though they probably won't, but they're saying, hey, we can do something about that. So they're, instead of looking at labor force participation, they're going to be looking at job openings. And as long as there are job openings, they're going to be looking at this and saying, we have room to tighten here. So at least for now, they're not looking at the stock market. They're not looking at the real estate market. They're not looking at the bond market. They're saying, ignore the inverting yield curve. We've got a yield curve right now. The 2-year is at 2.338 and the 10 is at 2.356. So incredibly close to inverting here. It flashed briefly inverted. The other parts of the yield curve are inverted already, like the 10, the 5 and the 30 and the 5 and the 10 are inverted. But the 2 and the 10 is the main one that people usually look at and say, hey, that's a sign of a pretty much guaranteed recession coming up soon. So they're saying, the Fed is saying, ignore that. If that does invert, ignore it. It doesn't matter this time. And all they're looking at is the labor force participation. I'm sorry, not the labor force participation rate, the job openings. And they're saying, as long as there's job openings, we have room to tighten until big players start to get knocked over. And that's going to be the turning point for them. Once a bank gets knocked over, once a global financial crisis starts to happen, once massive corporations, once a government needs a bailout, something like that. As of right now, though, they don't care the other pain that they're going to cause as long as they see job openings. That's the one metric that they're going to look at. And so that's what I'm expecting through the rest of this year. They're going to tighten into job openings until big players that are too big to fail start to fail. So as always, thank you so much for watching. You guys have a great day.